I am Daniel Legis, and welcome to Book 101 Radio. Book 101 is all about the books that I read for the last 40 years. Yeah, how he is my featured author of the month of September. He is walking on best-selling author to no other than Mr. Joe Clifford.
Hello, how are you? This is a new little cat. This is down there. You all right?
Oh, good. Wow. Amazing. So, Mr. Joe, can you please introduce more about yourself?
My name is Joe Clifford. I'm a writer, musician, artist. I've been writing books and recording and painting since I was a little kid. So that's what I do. It's who I am. And we're here to talk about, I won't say a word, the latest release, which is the second in the series, the Say My Name series, which I started a couple of years ago, and we have another one coming out next year with The Mandela Effect. That'll also be a Say My Name novel. And this is Luna Del Rey. Here we go. Now with Cyrus by my
Yes, and congratulations for spending the time here today. So, what is the main idea or theme of your latest novel? I won't say a word.
what is the theme of it? Did you say? I'm sorry. Yeah, the theme.
Yes.
I'm interested in madness. I'm interested in losing control. I'm interested in when people sort of lose the will to live, but they keep going living, to quote the great Johnny Cougar. I'm interested in the unsung hero, the working class hero. I have not really ever been comfortable being here alive. It's just not. It doesn't feel germane. It's always felt alien. I'm sure I'm not the only one who feels that way. So, as an artist or a writer, creator, you're exploring your relationship to the environment around you, and what you're hoping to do is touch on something that is universal, right? That's the magic formula to art. You take the unique and you render it universal. You take the universal and you render it unique. This is the formula that we all, anyone who's making art is going to use. And it's what makes the profession so challenging, because connecting with another person or finding out what kind of arts is going to resonate is tough, right? We have a lot of books and films and some music that you look at and you go, how the hell is this popular? Well, it's popular because it appeals to people. 50 Shades of Grey touched somebody, and Cardi B, I don't know who Cardi B is. I mean, I know what she looks like, I think, but I don't listen to that music because I don't listen to it. I'm not, I was never much of the country, not just the hip hop. I mean, it's what I do. And so the music that speaks to me has always been, it's a very small little narrow area. I'm from the East Coast. I'm a, Springsteen fanatic, but all that classic rock anyway. But the trick is that we all have something to say. We all want to hear something that makes us feel less alone, more comforted. And there's a very small, narrow window that you get to speak through, because there's so much art and there's so much entertainment out there. Most of the stuff I write, everything I write, everything everybody writes, it needs to be examined. It needs to be savored. It needs to be really delved into, because it's heavily, a lot of layers. You don't have that time. If you don't grab somebody from day one, page one, you don't have a hook, you don't have something to draw them in, you're not gonna get that attention, because there's just too much out there. So it's very little margin for error when you're creating.
So, who is your target audience for I won't say a word?
Well, I mean, I won't say a word. I bring back my brother Josh, who died in 2017, and so this book was really, really personal, and it was for people in our hometown, people who maybe miss him. It was also a chance for me to make some apologies on his behalf. He went out kind of hard with drugs and alcohol. I made it out, he didn't. So I felt like I had an obligation to sort of carry on, his spirit, but also carry on, what he would have wanted me to say on his behalf. I think I can speak for him, because I know he can speak for me.
So what genre does your novel fit into and why?
As I keep going, especially with the square tire stuff, less. I've gotten away from genre, and sort of entered this more hybrid field of science fiction and a little westerns and a little Twilight Zone and a little. I just sort of the kitchen sink approach, as opposed to when you're writing for a house and you're trying to fit neatly into a category where they can put you on a bookshelf. With Square Tire, I've been able to just write me, which I find gets weirder and weirder as I go. But I get to answer that call and see how weird I can get.
Yes. Who are the main characters and
The main
why?
character in the book, like I said, my brother is
Mhm.
brought back to life, and we have our unnamed narrator, who we call Buddy, who was the narrator, and say my name, and he's also the narrator in this one, and you'll see how that relates to Mandela effect. And you have really the backstory of all the Porter books. My J. Porter series was 5 books, and I talk about the I can't remember what I call them in that book. It's Adam and Michael Lombardi, and they're based on real people. They're based on Frank and Paul Manafort. Paul Manafort, the same as I do. He worked for former President Trump. And they're a very small family, 5 or 6 people. It's a made-up family name. And my family was, let's just say, victim of sort of that greed and corporate irresponsibility. And it cost, people lives, and I get to examine some crooked politicians and some slimy construction guys. But it's hard. It's a story of brothers. To start a story of regret and love and loss. And like everything else, we only write about 4 things. I think Dave Gilmore said that: love, life, death, and madness. So it covers all those 4.
So what is the central conflict? I want to say word.
I won't say a word. It's a first person narration, and our narrator Buddy can't speak, read, or there's something else he couldn't do. Can't speak, read, or something else, which makes telling he can't write either. Like he can't write, speak, read, or write. So he has like a assistant communicative device which allows him to communicate. It's a real condition. It's called dysphagia. But I was intrigued by having a narrator who can't speak, write, or read. And so how do you have somebody with that condition doing first person narration, which I think I answered, but it was a fun challenge.
So how did you structured I want to say word?
All the books are gonna have a 3-act structure because I went to school for this stuff, and this is what you learn. It gets ingrained, and every story really follows a 3-act structure in somewhere. Just like I think every essay in high school follows a 5-paragraph essay, to some extent, however perverted. Kimberly Harris, I'm sorry. So it unfolds, organically. It unfolds naturally. It's structure. I've plotted novels before. I think I'm at the point where I don't have to plot them. I can pretty much tell the story, and it's just going to adhere to this formula of mine because it's I've been doing this. My 20th book or something, somewhere around there. You sort of know where the love interest comes in. You know where the conflict comes in. You know where the twists come in. It's in a little bit, in a sense, it's painting by numbers, and you get to tweak that. But there is a formula for writers to follow, and that's why James Patterson is a genius and a millionaire, and I'm sitting here. You want to try to you're playing with trope, you're playing with genre, you're playing with different strategies in writing, and you have fun with it.
So how did you set the tone or mood?
Yeah, that happens later, tone especially. And this probably has the weirdest tone of any book I've written, I think. Or it's certainly close to a lot of it takes place in a mental hospital. There's a lot of cuckoo's nest going on, a lot of film references, stuff like Memento and the Christopher Nolan movies. There's also touches of Razor's Edge and Slaughterhouse-5 and Girl on the Train and all those things that I love in pop culture. It's sort of a kitchen sink novel. There's a lot of in jokes. It's pretty. There's a lot of depth there if you want to go down rabbit holes. But if you want to just be entertained and have a page turn, I think I'm turning the page. I hope so. That's what I'm here for. Entertain you.
For sure. For sure. So, what is the climax of I Won't Say a Word Without the Spoilers?
Well, I without the spoilers, I think we can say I bring this around that you can make this a case. This is a sequel to Junkie Love. You could also make this the case to this is the seventh Porter book. It ties a lot of my work in. It's all my work takes place in the same universe. Characters from one book will appear in another book, and again, it's not something you need to know. It's just something I do because I find it, interesting. I mean, if you're not interested as a writer, your audience isn't going to be interested. This was a fun book for me to write. It's weird. It's definitely weird.
Fun to write. Your latest novel, Mr. Yo. But before we go, and I want to shout out my top five countries listening to this podcast because in Suriname, I got number five on the Apple charts, number 10 in St. Kitts Nevis in books, number 19 in Suriname in arts, St. Kitts Nevis in arts, number 30 and 69 in Paraguay. Thank you so much for supporting this podcast because this podcast is created to empower writers, authors all over the world like Mr. Joe Clifford. So
Terribly.
how thank you so much. And of course my Geography 101. Thank you Italy, Korea, Canada, Egypt, and Hungary. And Food 101, Indonesia, India, Philippines, Canada, and New Zealand. Thank you for my top five countries listening to this podcast this week. So Mr. Joe, how will the novel's ending resolve the conflict or leave reader thinking?
Uh, yeah, I mean, it pulls back the curtain. There's a moment of the wizard being unveiled at the end of this book. It goes in a lot of different circles. I mean, that's all the stuff that goes underneath. That's the stuff that interests me as a writer. Like, I don't want to scare prospective readers away. It's a story about a guy who can't read or speak or write, and his brother goes missing. He comes back to find out what happened to him, and there's a dark web of intrigue that takes him down a twisted path, and you got some nefarious agents, and there's shootouts, and there's cops, and there's guns, and there's moments. Hey, it's a little
I
devil.
love it.
Yeah, you got a lot of stuff happening. It's a page turner. It's a pot boiler. It's a summer read. But underneath it, if you want to find more depth, there's certainly more depth there. But you don't have to. If you want to just be entertained, there's this shit entertain you.
Certainly, I won't say a word. How do you plan it to create tension and maintaining pacing throughout the novel?
Well, I mean, that's the job as any writer, or director, or artist. Say hi, Lunaville, right? You want to there's all tricks you learn. You have a bunch of stuff in your bag. I mean, just like being an architect or a carpenter or any job you have, you develop a skill set, and the more you go on, the more you can employ these tools of your trade. So I mean, those are always tough questions. I can just say I think I'm pretty good at writing. I've been doing it a while. I know how to get ratchet up tension, and there's all little tricks. And you'll learn this in grad school. You'll learn it just through osmosis, right? I mean, you just keep reading and be like, okay, that's what happens. I needed school. I needed somebody to tell me. I just wasn't somebody who could deduce. I'm very pragmatic in that sort of approach. You do this, you do that, you go here, you go there, and that helped me as a writer. But other people write differently. But yeah, resolving conflict and resolution, and these are all they're words that mean less the longer you do this because you're just doing your job. And I think I do it well.
Yes, very well said. Very, very well said. How do you incorporate dialogue to reveal character traits and move the plot forward?
Oh, it's the same answer, I think, Daniel. I mean, you put these people, these characters, you create the scenario, and it's usually something as simple as, in this book, it was, okay, so we got this nonverbal communicator who's living out in an institution out west, and his brother, the book starts with his brother falling asleep in a truck, on a highway. And then we go from there. Now the brother's missing. And from there, all these outside elements get layered in, and all the things that make writing fun and make writing tick get layered in. So you have your the call to action. This is all the hero's journey. Everything Joseph Campbell or going dumb it down to Christopher Vogler. So you have these little. I guess you call them like exits, right? Exits on a highway. You take them, and that takes you there. And it's another exit that takes you there. it becomes second nature, really. It is when you write this stuff. If you're doing it well, what I've always used as the barometer for how, if I know if I can read the book in one sitting and not get bored, I feel good about it. And that doesn't happen early. It doesn't happen often. It certainly happened with this one, where I could just sit down and read it cover to cover, which means the prose is moving. And there's elements like that too. You got prose, you got cadence, you got the rhythmic elements, you got musicality of language. There are so many things that go into making good writing. And so you're employing those at the same time. You're also examining different themes. The themes is, it sounds a little bit like high school, doesn't it? There's things you're interested in. There's things you want to talk about, and you can't do your therapy at the expense of the reader. However, you can, explore some psychological elements that may, as a byproduct, that investigation help you also in your life. So, I'm most at home when I'm writing and I hit that zone and I sort of disappear because it's, you're a god. Writers are, there's such a hubristic element to this, where you're creating an environment in which you can control everything, right? You create the world, and I think there's a line in the book. And it's like, I'll decide who lives, I'll decide who dies, and so just on that base level, knowing that I could resurrect my brother and bring him back and have him live on the page is really cool. It was cool. And it was something I thought would be fun. It ended up being absolutely horrific because every day I got to say hi to my best friend, and every night I had to say goodbye and watch him die again. I do not recommend writing at length of somebody, writing a fiction novel of somebody who died, because it was hard. It wasn't like writing nonfiction where, the end is already the end. We already know but as I'm writing this book, I can decide whether he lives or dies on the page. And that's a pretty big responsibility. And you're also having conversations through dialogue. My favorite part of the book is probably where Josh and I are talking in his truck, and we're just talking like we used to talk and saying things that we used to say. And there's only two people that really appreciate that. And one of them is dead. So, yeah.
So what is your revision process for refining the first draft?
All writing is revising, Daniel. All writing is revising. Try to get something on the page as fast as possible. I have gotten to where I now write a first draft, a horrible draft, a draft I would not want anyone to ever see, but I can write a draft in about 21 days. My first book took me 10 years to write. Every book I write now, I write a draft in under 30 days. It's a horrible draft. People die on page 6. They come back on page 7. Names change. I try not to go back, and it's a mess. It's a mess. My biggest fear, I have a lot of big fears. One of my biggest fears is dying before I get a chance to revise, and somebody finds this book and they just think I'm just a hack and somebody who's been writing books for me, like the Shakespeare thing. Like, no way he could have done it. Not that I'm Shakespeare. But you want to believe that you have some control over your art and having that. And you don't want your art to be shared with the world until you're ready for your art to be shared. And even then, you're kind of like, But it's like, showing a painting too soon or playing a sketch of a song too soon. There's things there that are really awesome, right? With the raw development of a draft, and you try to retain that spirit in subsequent revisions so you don't lose that. But you also, writing is, it's there is a template and a way to write. I teach writing. I teach writing at Florida International University. And, it's less is more. If you can say something in 10 words instead of 9, 9 words instead of 10, you say it in 9. And 8 words instead of 9, you say it in 8. It's very rare that you cut and make something worse. I always give the example of when you're turning in a short story for, you write a short story in 6,000 words, and then you find out that the contest is actually, 4,000 limit. You can get down to 4,000 words. Then you find out, actually it's down to 2,000 words. You can take that 6,000 word story, and you think, I can't cut a word. When you find out you have to cut it, you have to cut 2,000. When you're done with that 2,000 version, the 2,000 words is almost always better than 6,000. It's just tighter. It's faster. You get rid of anything that isn't absolutely essential. And you can do that down to 750 words, 250 words. You can get an entire story, a $10,000, I keep saying dollar. I'm fascinated with money right now. But you can take a 10,000 word story, whittle it down to 250 words, and that 250 will distill the ethos that you were trying to get with 10,000, and people will appreciate it, because people kind of don't want to read. They do want to read, but the numbers are dismal, man. It's one out of 4 after high school reads a book. a book? How many people read more than a book? It's a very limited audience, a very dedicated, passionate, rabid audience, and I love book readers, but it's kind of a dying art. We're going into films and scripts, and you got YouTube. My kid watches YouTube all day. Nobody does anything on YouTube, right? It's just a bunch of people sitting around playing video games, but they love it. Kids love it. Like, I don't. The world's passing me by, man. I'm getting old. But I had a little spot where I jumped on the train, and I stayed on that little spot, and I haven't moved from my seat. And this is, speeding along. This is all I can do is tell you what I see out my little window, and hopefully somebody will, it'll register with somebody.
For sure. Somebody will read all your books. So how do you know when your novel is finished and ready for publication or submission?
Yeah, the first book, like I said, 10 years, I'm meandering, and I couldn't, the first book I wrote, Junkie Love, it was a true story, and it's based on my time as a homeless junkie, and so I had, you have the story, a beginning, middle, and end, right? I started doing drugs, then do drugs, but how you tell that story is it's got to be told the way that story needs to be told. That story needs to be told in a non-linear sort of vignette, jumping around fashion to mirror the psyche of the fractured drug addict's mind. But when I got after I'm done with that book, I then had to start telling stories with beginning, middle, and end that to build up, organically, and that was harder. But yeah, you find out causality, you find out what connects this to that, and that'll generally carry you along, and you'll reach a point where you just say, okay, that's it. You just know, it's like being in love, or I don't know, when you're done. And,
when you're done. Very well said. Can you please invite our listeners to support all your books?
What about my books? Where to find them, you said?
Yes, can you please?
JoeClifford.com. JoeClifford.com is your one-stop shopping for all your Joe Clifford needs. Got my music, got my books, stories, everything I do. JoeClifford.com. I'm easy to find. If you want to talk, drop me a line, because I'm usually pretty.
Yes, people, let's support Mr. Joe Clifford, because if you support him, more books to come. And tune in next Monday, we're live again, and let's talk about another book of Mr. Joe. So, Mr. Joe, thank you for your time.
Oh, thanks for having me, Daniel. See you next week.
See you next week. More to come, people. See you soon.